Something else is wrong.
No, I'm good. Appreciate it. Okay. Okay. $9:30?
And I'm done.
Okay. 9:30? Okay. All right. So the Welkers would like some help moving. They've got boxes and everything. Saturday, 9:30, if anybody's available to help. And I really wish I could make that, but I'm actually on call right now. But but if anybody is available, they could really use the help. 9:30 on Saturday morning, and I'm sure their address is in the directory, and you can ask them as well. All right, we're going to continue our look at the book of Isaiah and continue to look through the indictments against Judah. But first of all, we have review questions. First of all, what two kings joined a coalition to fight against Judah? What two kings? What two kings? What were the names of the kings? Pekah and Reason. Pekah and Reason. Chapter 7 and verse 1. Pekah and Reason. Reason being the Syrian king, and Pekah being the king of Israel. And who was king in Judah at the time? Ahaz. That's right. So what did Isaiah instruct Ahaz to do, and how did Ahaz respond? That's found in Isaiah 7, 10 through 13.
Ask the Lord what he should do.
Ask the Lord what he should do? Or first of all, Isaiah told him not to worry about him, all right? That it was going to come to nothing for them. And so he tells Ahaz what to do after that. Ask for a sign. Ask for a sign. And how did Ahaz respond? He said, basically no. He said to ask God for a sign, a confirmation of his word. And Ahaz responded, I will not ask or tempt God, he said in response to that. It was normal for the people of God to ask God for a sign on things. Remember, Joshua did it. God did it with Moses and Aaron. It was normal for them, men of God, which Ahaz was not, but he was given a chance there. It was normal for man to confirm and have confidence in what God was instructing them through signs. That was something that was done. So Ahaz, of course, didn't do that. And we find Ahaz goes after all these other gods. So he's seeking all these other gods, won't seek the one true God. So we discussed that last week. Also last week, what were the 3 and M's of man's manufactured means that we discussed last class? One was magical. That's true. Yeah, military. You're almost there.
Give us the second letter.
Yeah, let's just throw it up there. Man's military might, man's mystical madness, and then man's mutual memberships. So I discussed that all last week, or last Wednesday. That instead of trusting in God, we tend to trust in these things, and you could probably name other things as well. We tend to trust in numbers. We tend to trust in military strength. And we grow complacent if we're on the team that has the military strength and has the numbers. We tend to turn to mystical madness. It's still happening today. We pulled up images of just locally the different psychics and mediums and stuff. People are in business doing that today. And even people still look at horoscopes and think that it makes a difference what time of year you were born because of the stars being aligned in certain places. And Isaiah spoke out against all of that, spoke out against it. Man's mutual memberships. As Ahaz thought he could count on that alliance with Assyria, he would find Assyria wasn't going to be much help to him. In fact, they would find themselves paying money to Assyria. And until Hezekiah comes on the scene, Hezekiah would see practically how that Assyria was nothing compared to God, compared to what God could do for Judah. So those were the M&Ms of last week. So our memory verse, taking away some more words here. The first word is what? Woe. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light, light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe unto them that are wise in their own, I gave you one, own eyes, and clever? Okay. Mine, I think of Dana Carvey. I think that's the name of the comedian that was on SNL. He was impersonating George H.W. Bush. He said, wouldn't be prudent. So prudent in their own sight. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. And so that's our memory verse. It's probably going to be our memory verse one more Wednesday, but it fits right in with what we're talking about right now. Because what we're talking about is the indictments against Judah, and the next part of the indictments against Judah are the woes pronounced. Woes pronounced against Judah. And we are only looking up to, at this point, up to chapter 12, so I threw it in at the beginning here. Isaiah in chapter 29, he says, woe to Ariel, the city where David dwelt. Add ye year to year, let them kill sacrifices. Woe to Ariel. If you look up the meaning of that word or that name Ariel, it means Lion of God. And what's he referring to? He's referring to a city, right? Which city is he referring to? If David dwelt there, what do we know? What do you know the name of that city to be? Jerusalem. Jerusalem was the capital of Judah. And so he's pronouncing a woe there to Judah, basically. Just as we will see how he pronounces woes on Damascus. Who's he pronouncing a woe on using Damascus? Not just the city, the entire nation of Syria. And woe unto Samaria. Who's he talking about there? The entire nation of Israel, that northern part of the kingdom that had split off. So further indictments against Judah, woes pronounced. What does woe mean? What do we think of when we think of that word woe? Suffering, sad. Think of gloom, despair, and agony.
Stop.
So we think of all these things, and when we read through the Bible, when we get to a passage, and we'll see it in chapter 5, where we see woe unto whom, woe unto this, woe unto that, and we read that word over and over and over, what are we to start thinking in our minds when we see that word repeated over and over and over? We just read it. What's that?
It's a warning.
It's a warning. Yeah, absolutely. If we're reading through there, we can. We're going to see a verse or a few passages before chapter 5, but we can go ahead and be looking at chapter 5. When we read through this and we see, woe to them that rise up early in the morning, that they may follow strong drink. And we see, we skip down, woe unto them that draw iniquity with cords of vanity. When we read that, are we getting the feel of, oh, well, he suggests, it's a suggestion, we better not do that, or we better not act that way. It's not just a suggestion, is it? It's an indictment. It is you pay attention, especially when this is coming from God. This is coming from God's prophet. And so that's what we're looking at here.
Something entirely.
Sorry about that. I just let it go then. That's Yosemite Sam. There you go. When Yosemite Sam says whoa, he means whoa. Okay, can you mute it? So we take that same understanding and even to
It won't come up.
All right, so when God says woe, he means woe. And it's not just a suggestion. If you look at the Strong's, if you look at a word study on it, it's a threatening. It's not a suggestion. It's a threatening. Woe to the sinful nation. You notice there's a lot of Isaiah in that this word is being used for. There are many forms of the word woe, even within the book of Isaiah, but it's a threatening, it's an admonishing. And when God pronounces a woe, we ought to listen, right? Judah ought to listen. And it's more than just, I don't like this. This means you change what you're doing. It's something that we need to take seriously, not read over at a glance and without understanding the gravity of what the prophet means there. When God says woe, he means woe. Can you click on the screen, please? Nice. Okay, there we go. So, when God says woe, he means woe. We're going to look through all these passages, and there are plenty more than this, but the section we're dealing with is up to chapter 12. I think the last passage we see in here is going to be in chapter 10. Woe unto those, first of all, that speak and act against God. Woe unto those that speak and act against God. Let me get here. So, there in chapter 3, and starting in verse 9, the show of their countenance doth witness against them, and they declare their sin as Sodom. They hide it not. Woe unto their soul, for they have rewarded evil unto themselves. Say ye to the righteous that it shall be well with them, for they shall eat the fruit of their doings. Woe to the wicked, it shall be ill with him, for the reward of his hands shall be given him. There's a lot of stuff to unpack there, and it doesn't seem like it, but just the word woe itself, it holds a lot of it. There's a lot of gravity to it. First of all, he says their countenance doth witness against them. What is a countenance? It's an outward, it's a look. Yes, it could be an expression. It's an outward sign of that which is inward. Outward appearance reflects inner state of the heart. So their very look is giving it away. That which they are doing is giving it away. Their actions are giving it away. That they declare their sin as of Sodom. They hide it not. That they declare their sin. They're not trying to hide anything. It's just out there. And don't we see this in the world? Is that not something we see in the world? Those with, our own brethren, we're not perfect. And sometimes we fall short. We don't broadcast it typically, do we? It's not something we're proud of. These people are proud of what they're doing. They declare their sin as of Sodom. And what's Sodom known for? Wickedness. Homosexuality. We think of the story of Lot, and that's exactly what Isaiah is evoking the image of Sodom, and just the outright shamelessness of the men that showed up at Lot's door that night, and they wanted those two men that they had solved, those two visitors, and if you recall what happened, they were just beating on that door, clawing at that door, and they were even struck blind by those two men. Were actually angels from God, right? They were struck blind and still strove for the door, trying to get in. They were shameless, and they were boldness in open rebellion. That's what the image that Isaiah is bringing forth. And you think that the people of Judah knew about Sodom and Gomorrah, knew what happened there? And that you think they understood what kind of comparison was being drawn between them and the people of Sodom and Gomorrah at that time? It ought to have been sobering to them. He says also, they've rewarded evil unto themselves. So this is of their own doing. It's of their own choice. They have made their bed, and now they're going to sleep in it. Consequences of sin are sometimes seen in this life. And if they're not seen in this life, they'll for sure be seen in eternity. Yes, sir.
And one thing, too, is they may not know that they're evil because, they call it good evil and the evil good.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't understand that they're actually evil,
Mm-hmm.
what they do. They think it may be good for whatever reasons,
Yeah.
But I mean, they don't understand the actual the sin that they're in.
Right. Well, I think the picture of this is kind of like what we see today, where people will just name the businesses. I think it was on one of Brother Don Blackwell's DVDs concerning tattoos, and one of the things he went into was just what they name the tattoo shops. It's just like they're, I don't know, I'm just coming up with something, Sinful Creations or something, where they'll name things in such a way that it's like they're flaunting or they're glorifying sin and proud of it. They're proud of the images that they're creating. And so that is what Judah, one of the many things that they're being indicted for. They're speaking out, they're acting against God, they're doing so boastfully, pridefully, boldly, and they're doing it to themselves. They know what they're doing. They know it is contrary to God, and they're doing it anyway. Woe unto those that speak and act against God. Also in verse 11 that we just read, it shall be ill with him. So there's a correlation between one's actions and the consequences of those actions. And again, we could suffer consequences due to sin in this life. We might think we've gotten away with sin, but we'll suffer those consequences after this life on earth is over. And so it shall be ill with him. The reward of his hands. So everybody's held accountable for what they've chosen to do in this life. I think that's all I have to add. Reward for his hands shall be given. Chapter 5 is where we see a great number of these woes being pronounced. And the first of which, and we've gone through the vineyard, the parable of the vineyard before. In verse 8, woe unto them that join house to house, that lay field to field, till there be no place, that they may be placed alone in the midst of the earth. In mine ears, said the Lord of hosts, of a truth many houses shall be desolate, even great and fair, without inhabitant. Yea, 10 acres of vineyard shall yield 1 bath, and the seed of an omer shall yield an ephah. So woe unto the greedy here. Those that join house to house, lay field to field. I think of the word monopoly when that's being described. This is unchecked greed leading to abuse and neglect of others, and the isolation and desolation of God's people who were the seed of Abraham. They were, if we can look back here, well, first of all, Judah, as we went through in our introduction, is experiencing a period of prosperity. And what usually happens in a period of prosperity, you just buy, you accumulate things. We have in this country a lot of storage units, if you've noticed. You could probably think of 3 or 4 on your drive home. So accumulation, hoarding happens, and there's an emphasis on the reliance on material gain here. So let's see. So the Mosaic law had in place things designed to prohibit the hoarding of property. And we can look at Joshua chapter 13 through 21. After the Israelites had entered Canaan, you know that Joshua divided the land among the 12 tribes. Each tribe received a specific portion of their inheritance. And so that division was meant to ensure that every tribe of the nation of Israel, which the purpose of Israel was what? To bring about the Christ, right? To be the seed line to Christ. So we need all these tribes. All these tribes had different roles they played, didn't they? And so the preservation of these tribes was important. And so the division here of the land in Joshua chapter 13 and following was to prevent this concentration of land in the hands of a few people. Make sense? Then you have in Leviticus chapter 25, verses 8 through 17, what's described is the year of Jubilee, the year of Jubilee. And every 50th year, known as the Jubilee, all land was to be returned to its original family owners. So land would be exchanged for different things over the course of time. One of those things is the dowry of a bride and other things. Well, every 9th year, or 50th year, was the year of Jubilee, where that would return back to the tribe that had it in the first place, to preserve that seed line and to preserve, to make sure they all had that space there. So it was that law was intended to prevent a permanent loss of family land due to debt or sale, ensuring that land ownership remained balanced between these different tribes. Something that God had designed and put together. God saw what the people of Israel needed to continue as he needed them to. You had inheritance laws in Numbers chapter 27. So you have specific laws given regarding inheritance to ensure that land remained within the family. And so much to that same end, the same purpose of that. And then you have in Leviticus 25, 23 through 28, the prohibition of permanent sale. So the land could not be sold permanently because it belonged to God, and the people were merely tenants. That's something to think about. We're all about land ownership in this nation, right? And what would it say to you if you had to give it up every 50 years and it had to go back to the family that had it in the first place? You realize you really don't own anything here, do you? I already kind of feel like I don't own my land because I pay taxes on it. So I'm basically renting it from the government. So I already feel like I don't own it, but I really don't own it, do I? I really don't own anything. God owns everything. I am merely a steward. I'm a tenant of the land that I live on right now. And so that principle is reinforced there, that the land should not be concentrated in the hands of a few, but should remain distributed among the people there. So woe unto them that join house to house, that lay field to field, till there be no place, that they may be placed alone in the midst of the earth. And these people would find those dwellings would be desolate and empty. The land would be unprofitable, that they were trying to profit off of. You'll see a few measurements, units of measurement there in 9 and 10. A bath is a measure of liquid, roughly equivalent to about 6 gallons or 22 liters. A homer is a large measure of dry goods, about 220 liters, and an ephah is a smaller measure, about 22 liters. And so the image there is a drastic reduction in productivity. The land's not as productive as it used to be. So 10 acres of vineyard producing only a small amount of wine and a large amount of seed yielding a disproportionately small harvest is what they're going to find. Anytime your pursuit is material, even if you achieve it, you're going to lose it eventually. So to rely on material accumulation, to put all your effort, your time into just getting things, it's futile. It's vanity, as Solomon would say in Ecclesiastes. So woe to the greedy. Woe to the hedonistic. Chapter 5 and verse 11 and following. I think it's going to be 11 through 17. Somebody could read that, please. Isaiah 5, 11 through 17.
Woe to those who rise early in the morning, that they may follow intoxicating drink, who continue until night, till wine inflames them. The harp and the strings, the tambourine and flute, and wine are in their feast, but they do not regard the work of the Lord, nor consider the operation of his hands. Therefore my people have gone into captivity, because they have no knowledge. Their honorable men are famished, and their multitude dried up with thirst. Therefore Sheol has enlarged itself, and opened its mouth beyond measure. Their glory and their multitude and their pomp, and he who is jubilant shall descend into it. People shall be brought down, each man shall be humbled, and the eyes of the lofty shall be humbled. But the Lord of hosts shall be exalted in judgment, and God who is holy shall be hallowed in righteousness. Then the lambs shall feed in their pasture, and in the waste places of the fat ones strangers shall be.
All right, thank you very much. So we've already read about the indictments placed on the women of Judah and their promiscuity, their focus on their clothes, the vanity and the just the focus on the fancy things in life. We've saw with those women, and then here we have in verses 11 and following. You kind of see it, don't you? Just this focus on gratification, self-gratification, hedonism, basically. And so here, woe unto them that rise up early in the morning. So they're rising up early in the morning. If I rise up early in the morning, it's usually to do something. It's usually something I find important. Well, that's not always the case, but usually most people don't like getting up early, right? And if they get up early, it's because there's something they need to do, something they find important, something they have prioritized. What are these people doing? They're rising up early in the morning so they could follow strong drink. And they continue that until night, until wine inflamed them. So their entire life, 24/7, it's consumed with indulgence. And what that leads to is moral and physical decay. We're going to find that there's a lot of focus, or there's more than one mention of alcohol and its influence on Judah at that time. But if you think about it, I don't know if it's been the case in every culture since that, but still today our culture, glorifies alcohol consumption. Is that not the case? I mean, you see television commercials of people having a great time. It's football season, so it's just every single commercial, it's a twisted iced tea, and they're all having so much fun, slip and slides and all this stuff, and they glorify it, make it seem great. It's super indulgent. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I mean, they glorify it because it brings in money. You follow the money, like any donation dinner you go to for an organization, one of their number one priorities, we have to have alcohol. There's
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it brings in money, and so again, it's like another added evil kind of wickedness.
Yeah.
Or not kind of, it is wickedness to it, and so.
Yep.
You go out with a group of people and everybody, like people are ordering wine and you say, I don't drink.
Mm-hmm.
They automatically say you're an alcoholic or something, or you're in recovery.
Oh, yeah.
It's not normal to just,
And that would be an acceptable reason to not drink, is because I'm an alcoholic. But if the reason is so I don't become an alcoholic,
they just,
somehow that's not acceptable.
just to say I don't drink because I don't drink is, you have
Yeah.
to explain yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the morning, oh yes, the morning after, exactly, yes. So that's the ugly side. You might be all party right now, but tomorrow morning it might not be the case, and you're going to wish you hadn't, and then you'll probably continue to do it another time anyways. Our culture glorifies it, and I can remember growing up and seeing Cheers on TV. You want to be where everybody knows your name, right? And I thought that was great. I mean, not the alcohol part, but I was like, wow, there's a place, you go there every day after work, and it's the same people, and you get to talk to them, and you've got relationships with all these people, and you come in, and everybody says your name as soon as you come through the door, if your name's Norm, but it glorifies it, right? It makes you want to partake in it. It's something that they've normalized, they've glorified it, and a lot of people prioritize it. You have to do it. If you go to a baseball game, you got to have a beer. So it's a part of their culture then as well. Now let me ask you, how often are we thinking about God's word when we're doing this, when we're indulging in these things? Is God's word the first thing on our mind? No, especially not if it's in his word not to do it, right? The same with those women, mincing as they walk down the street. Were they thinking about God as they did that? They surely weren't. That's where the psalm, again, I think it's just going to come up in every sermon that Sean preaches in class that I teach. It's going to be Psalm 119:11. Thy word have I hid in my heart that I might not sin against thee. I'm not going to take a drink if his word's hidden in my heart. I'm not going to. If I'm thinking about his word, what his will is for me, that's not a choice I'm going to make. So their pursuit of pleasure indicates that his word was not hidden in their heart. And so that's going to lead to spiritual blindness and ignorance of God's work if we continue reading to verse 17 there. And so they're going to face hunger and thirst and their revelry now is going to be sorrow. Woe to the hedonistic. Woe unto those that insist upon carrying their sin around with them. I couldn't think of a way to summarize that. But Isaiah 5:18, somebody please, 5:18 and 19, please.
Woe to those who drag iniquity with cords of falsehood, and sin as if it were with cart ropes, who say, let him make speed, let him hasten his work, that we may see it, and let the purpose of the Holy One of Israel draw near, and come to pass that we may know it.
Thank you very much. So when I go to Publix to pick something up, I went this morning to pick up some sparkling water because we were out. And Publix, I don't know if you know, often has their BOGOs. And so you buy one, you get one free. And so we just stock up on whatever's BOGO with sparkling water. And we'll get like 6 cases of it. And I can't carry around 6 cases of sparkling water, so what do? I get a cart. That's if I know I'm coming into Publix for 6 cases of sparkling water, I grab a cart on the way in. I intend to grab that cart because I can't carry the load of all of that, or at least I would get very tired if I were to attempt to carry that load. So those that draw iniquity with cords of vanity. So there's a persistence that the people of Judah are pursuing sin with. There's a persistence, as it were with a cart rope. They intentionally carry the sin around with them. And then also there's the fact that sin is a burden. Sin is a burden. We aren't quick to admit it sometimes that it's a burden, but we intentionally carry sin. It's the craziest thing. In verses, okay, let's we'll pick up there next week. I've got a few verses to look at in concerning the burden of sin and the craziness that must be in our brains to willingly carry that sin around with us. Any comments or questions?
Well, I just think verse 11 is the way that allows man to be able to cope with doing.
Mm-hmm.
So the hardest thing for man to do is to deal with his sin problem.
Mm-hmm.
And the easiest outlet to avoid that is these worldly distractions, which would include alcohol.
Right?
And rather than dealing with the care of our sin, we try to mask it and distract ourselves from it through a brief euphoric feeling that we gain through alcohol.
Absolutely.
And that allows us to feel a level of physical relief for a brief moment so that we don't have to face the reality of carrying around our sin.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a cyclical death spiral.
Yep.
Because it just creates more sin and just gets even worse.
Yep,
We
absolutely.
don't deal with the problem.
If you think about it, alcohol really is probably the most clear illustration of what sin is, because we don't see all sin the same way, but really it all, if there's something you have a problem with, then alcohol is a very good illustration of it. Because what do? What does the drunkard do? He gets hammered one night, wakes up with, well, first of all, he's staggering around, can't control his mouth, can't control his faculties, any of his faculties. Doesn't look fun to me, right? And could end up in trouble that night. Wakes up the next morning with a splitting headache. Probably, I think the throw up would probably come up first. Probably starting that night. And throwing up is not fun. Vomit is not fun. What does he do? He seeks it again. Sin does the same thing. We don't recognize the burden of sin always. But if we've got a problem with something, we return to it usually. Yeah.
I was in a wreck sometime because I came home from work in Magna Factory outlet in Foley, Alabama, and I was a manager there. And we got all late, almost 10 o'clock. But I came home, and this guy kept coming behind me. He got closer and closer, and I thought, he's gonna ram me. So I just swerved out of the way, and my car flipped upside down, kind of right close to the church building where we worshiped for quite some time. But we went down to the police station to identify the car, and I told them that was it. And they took us into the police station, and the guy was in the jail cussing and raving and everything. He was drunk. They had to spray him with mace to calm him down. And, you know, that's the picture that alcoholism does for you. I don't know, the Howard made an impression on me several years ago. I watched some of his films, and he showed the pictures of people with dads that had alcohol, how to beat the kids, how they came and beat the wife, and how their there were wrecks along the highway, people with mangled bodies because of an alcoholic or someone drinking. And that's the picture we need to see instead of these commercials that glorify drinking.
Yep.
I think that's one of the biggest things for our kids. That's a lot of conversations they're already having is debates in a kind way about alcohol. And I think it's just very difficult for them to see that it's not just that horrible picture of what drinking will do. We shouldn't even be taking that first step.
Absolutely.
We never take that first step. We never get to that point. But sometimes it's so easy to see. I'm just having, you know, when we were at Halloween and the family that we were with, some of them had just one drink. They weren't acting crazy. But we're trying to teach our children that one sip of alcohol starts to alter your mind. So if we never do it, we're never going to get to that a horrible situation. But we have to remember that as a Christian, we shouldn't be protecting of anything that would intoxicate us because the devil he wants us, and it just makes it easier. So like I said before, am I thinking about him? If I'm thinking about him, why would I do that if I'm not closer to him?
Absolutely.
Great point.
Yep. And that was a good point. I know we're way past time, but just further proving the point that alcohol is a vivid illustration of any sin, because we start it, and at first, alcohol, first sip, your judgment, believe it or not, starts to be impaired. And when your judgment's impaired, you say, well, I'm just going to have one drink. Well, your judgment's impaired. You might slip into further drinks because your judgment's impaired. And sin does the same thing. Sin, you partake in it once, and you will gradually get lost in it. And you may not see the same vivid, obvious consequence that you see with alcohol with any other sin, but it's there, and you'll find yourself growing callous to it, and before you know it, you're at it. You might come to the realization that you need to change, and you stop it, but like any sin, sin is enticing. You'll end up there again, just like with alcoholism. I appreciate everybody's attention this evening. We'll pick up there and talk about the weight of sin and how that's illustrated by Isaiah 5:18 next week.
We're going to sleep better tonight, aren't we?
We are.
Yes.
You didn't start the light.
No, I just stepped in.
Love you, buddy. Tight, loosen it up for you, fixing it.
we got,